Hello again. Well, I'm out on the middle fork of the Snoqualmie River, just east of North Bend, here in Washington State. It's a warm, late September day. It's probably the last warm day of September. It's been a couple rough weeks here at the end of September. We had a lot of wildfire smoke from California, Oregon, and Washington, which made the air quality really unhealthy. And then we had a couple weeks of really heavy rain, which cleared the air out, and it was great for the garden, but not so good for plein air painting. Well, the weather finally cleared and it's glorious now. The air is clean and it's bright sunlight. So I'm out trying to find something to paint. I've been driving along the middle fork of the Snoqualmie River, which is a beautiful drive. It goes on for miles, and there's trails taking off, places to park, and ways to get down to the river, places to hike all along the river. And the fall colors are starting to come out. It's a beautiful day to get out and go for a nice long drive and a little bit of a hike. I found something I wanted to paint. Let me show you. Here's the scene I want to paint. I think I'll zoom in on this. Just try to get those distant mountains and the middle ground mountains and that row of trees and that lit bank of rocks, and then the river curling around in kind of a nice S pattern. I'm not quite sure about the size of panel or the orientation, whether I want to try to capture it in a portrait or a landscape. I'll need to play with it a little bit on my iPhone. If you've seen my other videos, I have this iPhone hack where I take a picture or two with my iPhone and then I crop in using different sizes and different orientations and try to find the most engaging composition I can. And if you do it the way I do it, it puts the 1/3 lines right on the picture, which makes the initial sketch of the composition pretty easy. It's kind of a nice shortcut. So I'm gonna get set up here. I'm in the trees a bit, so I should have a little bit of shade while I paint. Nice spider in his web there. The sun is up there and it's traveling that direction to the west, so it should go behind that line of trees before too long, but it should leave the light on that scene, hopefully. Sometimes I'm not quite correct on my orientation, and so the sun doesn't quite go where I want it to, but I'll do my best. So let me get set up here. As always, thanks so much for joining me. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Alright, I have my colors laid out. I'll give you a quick rundown. I've got titanium white, cerulean blue, cad blue, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, burnt umber, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, cad red, cad yellow, radiant yellow from Gamblin, and yellow ochre. That's a lot of colors. I may or may not use them all, but I've got them out in case I want them. I've got a little bit of liquid here as well. And I'll start out with a turpentine wash. I have my turpentine in here. I use artist distilled turpentine. I've got a little sketch showing the curve of the river, the line of the trees, the line of the mountains, just to give me a rough start with the turpentine wash. I like starting with the turpentine wash because it is very dynamic. It's kind of fun. It takes the white away from the canvas or the panel and gets me started. I'll start with the turpentine wash and I'll wipe out the lightest lights and get a value study based on that initial wash. Then I'll mix the final paints and start to paint. In the scene out there, I see a lot of cerulean blue and ultramarine blue in those background mountains. I see a lot of cad yellow in those middle ground trees, and then a lot of cerulean blue again in the foreground. So I think I'm just going to go with a pretty warm burnt sienna underpainting the turpentine wash. I think that'll complement those colors nicely. The underpainting sometimes shows through the little breaks in the final coat of painting, so it's nice when there's a complement between the final color and the underpainting. It's salmon spawning season here in Washington, so I'm also going to have my eye on the river to see if any salmon are coming up the river in their annual spawning. I'm starting with the sky. I'm going to key the painting off the sky. The sky is obviously the highest value in the scene, the lightest color in the scene. So I've got that down. It's just off-white. It's almost pure white with just a little bit of blue, a little bit of alizarin crimson to tint it. And now I'll mix up the rest of the colors keyed off of that very bright sky. It's late summer, and I love those golden colors you get. Not quite orange, not quite red yet, when the deciduous trees just start to lose their green of summer, start to go into the bright colors of fall. I'm starting to see that now, especially as the sun is setting. There's still a little bit of smoke haze in the air, and it's giving everything just a little bit of a reddish tinge, and it's also increasing the atmospheric perspective. It's pushing those hills and mountains further back. So I'm trying to capture that. I won't finish here on the side of the river. I'll have to take some color notes. I'll have to take a lot of reference photos, and I have this video that I can refer to later to try to recapture that feeling and that color harmony. Late summer beside the river. Alright, I've mixed up a few colors for that farthest back mountain. I'll paint those very quickly. Here's kind of a very light purple for that background mountain. A little bit of reddish highlight, a little bit of whitish highlight for the rocks in that background mountain. And then very grayed out light green for the trees on that farthest back mountain. As I paint, I'll use a larger bristle brush, and I'll just kind of dip into pure color to give a little bit of a... I'll dip into the pure pigments just to tilt these grays a little bit one way or the other. For example, where the mountain, where this far mountain meets this middle ground mountain, it tilts kind of bluish, tilts a little bit lighter in value and a little bit more cerulean blue. So I'll just dip into a little bit of white and a little bit of cerulean to give that effect, almost like there's fog rising out of the valley between those two mountains. have the colors for the middle ground trees now mixed up, and my colors as I come forward are becoming richer and higher contrast to give that illusion of distance. So the farthest colors in the back have the least contrast. Their values are very close range. That middle ground mountain, a little bit higher contrast, a little bigger value range. In the foreground and middle ground trees now will have the deepest and darkest shadows, the highest value highlights, the highest chroma color. Try to get that illusion of depth. I'm losing the light fast now. It's getting harder to judge color and value now here in the shade. The shade's becoming pretty deep, so I'm going to go pretty fast on this middle ground set of trees, and I may just hint at the river flowing in to the scene. I definitely won't finish it here tonight. I've got a little bit of a hike to get back to the truck and a little bit of drive to get home, so I need to kind of rush this part of it and leave some of it for in the studio. But I do like how it's coming out so far. Alright, well, you can see the light is faded. It's really pleasant out. It's cooling down, but it's becoming too dark for me to finish. The light is changing too much. Let me show you where I ended up. Here's the scene now. Still a little bit of light, but all the light on the foreground and the river is gone, except for just a couple spots. That's where the painting ended up. You can see I didn't get to the river. It's still the initial wash. I may come back here again tomorrow and try to finish in the afternoon if it's a sunny day like this again, or I may finish it up in the studio. I know it's kind of hard to see in this light, but I do like how those mountains came out. Very rough, but really suggests distance. This is just too rough right now. I may scrape it down and go from kind of a rougher start when I start again, either here or in the studio. Had a nice time standing out here beside the river. It's late enough in the year that the bugs are gone, so just really pleasant. As always, thanks so much for joining me. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Keep your eye out for my next video. I'll finish this painting up in the studio. Until then, see you on the trail.